Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're taking a deep dive into something every business owner or future business owner needs to know: emergency preparedness.
That's right.
We've got some really great information from Good Rates Insurance and also a recent article on how businesses right here in Canada can prepare for the unexpected. And get this, in just 1 year, Canada saw almost $9 billion in damages from things like fires, floods, and hail.
That's a huge number. And it just goes to show how vulnerable businesses, especially smaller businesses, are to these kinds of events. What's interesting is that while big companies often have whole teams dedicated to preparing for disasters, smaller businesses often have to figure things out on their own, relying a lot on their insurance brokers or providers.
It makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah,
Speaking of insurance, Good Rates Insurance has all sorts of options for businesses, don't they?
they
I
do.
saw they cover everything from property and vehicles to liability and even cybercrime.
They do, and having that insurance safety net is so important, but it's really just one piece of the puzzle. A really strong emergency response plan means understanding your risks and having ways to deal with them. It goes beyond just having insurance.
So where do we even start with that? The article mentions some pretty simple things businesses can do to prevent problems, like checking online flood maps
Oh, yeah.
to see if your business is at risk. Who knew those even existed?
They're a great resource, and they're free, available online.
Really?
Yeah, you can easily find flood maps for your area on government websites. You just put in your business address and boom, you'll see your risk level. And if you're in a high-risk zone, well then taking steps like moving important equipment or inventory to a higher level becomes really important.
And it's not just floods we have to worry about either. Remember that crazy hailstorm in Calgary back in August 2024?
Oh, yeah.
Over $1 billion in damage to cars alone, and something like half of them were completely totaled.
Totally. That's why it's so important to be proactive. Something as simple as putting vehicles inside or getting protective covers could save businesses a lot of money and stress.
Exactly. Better safe than sorry, especially when it comes to weather. But let's not forget about fire prevention, too. The article had some good tips on that. For example, keeping roofs and gutters clean to stop embers from starting fires.
That's so important. People don't think about that very much. Remember that fire at the Olympic Stadium in Quebec? Started with an ember that got caught in some debris near a vent and caused a ton of damage. It just goes to show you how these small oversights can lead to huge problems.
Makes you think, huh?
Yeah,
It makes you realize that preventing problems is just as important as having insurance.
absolutely.
And speaking of prevention, the article also talked about being aware of things like exposed gas lines and tanks, and knowing how and when to shut them off in an emergency. These things seem pretty basic, but I guess they're easy to forget about until it's too late. So we've talked about flood maps and being prepared for hail and fire. What else should businesses be thinking about when it comes to emergencies?
One thing that people often forget about is the role of their vendors.
Okay,
In a crisis, having a network of reliable vendors can be a game changer.
that makes sense. But what makes a vendor reliable in this context? What should businesses look for when it comes to emergency preparedness?
That's a great question. When you're thinking about your vendors, you have to look beyond their everyday services and think about what they can do for you in an emergency.
So it's not just about getting the best price on supplies. It's about who can actually help you get back on your feet after something bad happens.
Exactly. And that means asking some tough questions, like does your vendor have their own disaster recovery plan? How quickly can they respond in an emergency? Do they have backups if something happens to their main facilities?
Wow, I never even thought to ask those sorts of things. It's like having a whole other level of checks for choosing vendors.
It is, but it's super important if you want to make sure your business can handle a crisis. You need to know that the people you depend on can be there for you when you need them the most.
So having good vendors is like having a backup team, ready to step in when things go wrong.
Exactly. They're like an extension of your own emergency response team.
And speaking of emergency response teams, the article also talked about having a plan in place for your employees.
Oh, for sure. Your employees are your most valuable asset. Their safety should be your top priority in an emergency.
Definitely. So what kind of things should be included in an employee emergency plan?
Well, the most important thing is that everyone knows what to do and where to go if something happens. Do they know the evacuation routes? Is there a designated meeting point?
So it's about having clear instructions so everyone knows what to expect and can react quickly and safely.
Exactly. But it goes beyond just writing a plan down. You need to train your employees regularly, have drills, and make sure everyone understands their role in an emergency.
So it's an ongoing process of training and preparation, not a one-time thing.
Exactly. Practice makes perfect, as they say, right? And in this case, practice could mean the difference between a smooth recovery and total chaos.
I can definitely see that. But it's not just about the employees, is it? What about customers? How do you keep them informed and keep things running smoothly for them during an emergency?
That's a really important part of it too. You need a plan for talking to your customers, keeping them updated about the situation, and letting them know how it might impact your services.
Especially these days when everything moves so fast, businesses can't afford to go silent for too long.
I agree. That's why having a plan for alternative workspaces, communication channels, and even backup suppliers is so crucial.
I remember Goodrate's Insurance mentioned something about business interruption coverage.
Uh-huh.
Maybe that's something worth looking into for businesses that are worried about losing money during an emergency.
Absolutely. Business interruption coverage can be a lifeline for a lot of businesses after a disaster. It helps to make up for lost income and expenses when you're forced to shut down.
So it's like a safety net for your income, not just your physical assets.
Exactly. And remember, the ultimate goal is not just to survive a disaster, but to recover and come back even stronger.
It's like bouncing back better than before.
Right.
So we've talked about a lot here, from flood maps and preventative measures for hail and fire to the importance of vendors, employee safety, and keeping customers in the loop. What else should businesses be thinking about?
Well, one area we haven't really touched on yet is the psychological impact of these disasters.
Well, that's an interesting point. You're talking about the stress, the anxiety, the emotional toll it takes on everyone involved.
Exactly. Trauma shows up in a lot of different ways, and it's important to have support systems in place, whether it's counseling, employee assistance programs, or just fostering open communication. Taking care of the human side of things is really important.
That's a really important point. It's not just about fixing buildings and processes. It's about building back resilience in people.
Very well said. And remember, resilience is something you build over time. It's about constantly learning, adapting, and improving the ways you prepare for these situations.
So being prepared for emergencies isn't a one-time task. It's an ongoing commitment. It's about protecting your business, your employees, your customers, and even your own mental health.
Absolutely. It's about making preparedness a core part of your business culture, and it all starts with awareness, which is exactly what we're trying to do here today.
And that brings us back to the sources we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Both Goodrate's Insurance and the article really stress the importance of getting expert advice. They're basically saying, don't try to do this on your own.
Right. It's like having a guide in uncharted territory. A good insurance broker or a risk management consultant can help you make sense of all the complexities of emergency preparedness, find solutions that fit your specific needs, and provide ongoing support every step of the way.
So it's not just about buying an insurance policy and crossing your fingers.
Right.
It's about working with experts who really understand your business and can help you be proactive about managing risks.
That's a much better way to approach it, don't you think? Instead of feeling overwhelmed by what-ifs, you can tackle emergency preparedness with confidence and a sense of control.
I like that. But let's be real, this is a lot of information. Where does someone even start?
That's a great question, and it's one we'll explore in more detail in our next segment.
Feels like we're peeling back the layers of an onion here. The more we talk about emergency preparedness, the more we realize there's to think about.
Yeah, it's a good analogy. We tend to focus on the immediate stuff, like the damage to property or disruptions to the supply chain, but there's a lot of ripple effects we need to be ready for.
Like what? What kind of things?
Well, for starters, think about the impact on your employees. I mean, these events can be super stressful, even traumatic, and it's important to have a support system in place.
Right, so it's not just about physical safety, but their mental well-being too.
Exactly. Trauma can show up in all sorts of ways. It's crucial to create a workplace culture that acknowledges that and offers ways to cope. Things like counseling services, employee assistance programs, or even just encouraging people to talk openly about what they're going through. It can make a big difference.
It's about recognizing that people need time and support to process what's happened, right? And that taking care of them is just as important as getting the business back on track.
Absolutely. And even after the initial shock, there's the long-term process of, rebuilding that resilience.
What does that look like? How do you actually do that?
It's about constantly learning and adapting. It's about improving the ways you prepare based on what you've learned from past experiences and what new threats might be out there. It's about making that awareness and preparedness part of every level of the company.
So it's not just a one-time checklist. It's like a constant journey, always improving and getting better.
Exactly. And that journey means getting expert advice, staying informed about best practices, and being proactive. You got to identify those potential risks before they turn into actual problems.
Speaking of expert advice, both Goodrate's Insurance and that article we talked about really emphasized not trying to do this alone.
Yeah, they're right. It's like, imagine you're exploring uncharted territory. It's always better to have a guide. A good insurance broker or a risk management consultant can be that guide. They can help you navigate all the tricky stuff, find solutions that fit your needs, and be there to support you along the way.
So it's not just about getting insurance and hoping for the best.
Nope.
It's about building relationships with experts who really understand your business and can help you get ahead of those risks.
Exactly. They can help you spot things you might have missed, make sure you've got the right insurance coverage, and connect you with other resources you might need.
It's like having a whole team of experts in your corner, ready for anything.
That's a great way to put it. And remember, building that network, it takes time. You can't do it overnight.
So if the business owner is just starting to think about this, where should they begin? What's step one?
The first step is always awareness, right? Understanding what risks your business might face. And that starts with looking at your specific location, industry, and how you operate.
So it's about asking, what are the most likely emergencies we could face? And then figuring out how to be ready for those specific things.
Exactly. Like if you're in a coastal area, hurricane preparedness is going to be top of mind. While a business in a place prone to wildfires, they're going to focus on fire safety and evacuation plans.
And if you're in Canada, where we get hit with a bit of everything, well, you need to be ready for blizzards, ice storms, heat waves, floods, the whole shebang.
Exactly. It's all about tailoring your preparations to your environment, to what makes sense for you.
So you understand the risks. What's next? What do you do then?
Then it's time to develop your emergency response plan. Think of it as a roadmap for how your business will handle all those different crisis situations.
So it's like a playbook for dealing with the unexpected, making sure everyone knows their role.
Exactly. It should cover things like evacuation procedures, how you'll communicate, a list of who to contact, all those essential details.
It should also cover things like data backup and recovery, what to do if your supply chain gets disrupted, and how you'll keep customers informed.
All crucial stuff. And remember, your emergency response plan, it's not a set it and forget it kind of thing. You need to review it, update it, and test it out regularly to make sure it stays relevant and it works when you need it.
So it's a living document evolving along with your business and the threats out there.
You got it. And just as important as having the plan itself is making sure everyone knows it, understands it, and knows what to do.
So that means regular training and drills so everyone's on the same page when a real emergency happens.
Exactly. And it's not just going through the motions. It's about building a culture where everyone gets it, everyone understands that being prepared is important and feels like they have the power to take action.
It's about making it a team effort, everyone doing their part,
That's it. And that brings us to another really important piece, communication.
right? Because when things are chaotic, being able to communicate clearly can be a lifesaver.
Absolutely. Your communication plan needs to outline how you'll keep everyone in the loop during an emergency. Your employees, your customers, your vendors, everyone.
It should also cover things like who's the spokesperson for the company, what channels you'll use to get information out, that sort of thing.
Right. And it's important to think about what you'll do if your usual ways of communicating are disrupted. Like, what if the power goes out? Or the internet's down?
So you need backup systems like alternate phone lines or even old school methods like printed notices.
Exactly. The goal is to keep the information flowing even when things are really tough.
Okay, so we've talked about getting advice from experts, building that emergency response plan, training your people, and making sure you can communicate effectively. What else should businesses be thinking about when it comes to being prepared?
Another key part is financial preparedness, making sure you have the resources to weather the storm, so to speak.
And that includes having the right insurance, right?
100%. That's where a company like Goodreads Insurance can be such a valuable partner. They can help you figure out your risks and make sure you have the right coverage to protect your business if a disaster hits.
So it's not about just having any insurance, it's about having the right insurance for you.
That's it. And it's important to review your coverage regularly to make sure it still fits, especially as your business grows and changes.
I know they offer a free business insurance coverage review, which seems like a good starting point.
It is. It's a great way to get peace of mind knowing you're protected.
But beyond insurance, what other financial things should businesses be thinking about?
It's also a good idea to have an emergency fund, to cover those unexpected expenses that insurance might not cover.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Like, imagine you need to relocate temporarily, or pay your employees overtime, or replace damaged equipment. Those costs can add up quickly.
So it's about having that financial cushion to help you get back on your feet quickly without having to drain your operating funds or take on debt.
Exactly. It's about being financially prepared for the unexpected, just like you're operationally prepared.
It makes sense to have both sides covered so you're not caught off guard when something happens.
Totally. And remember, financial preparedness is ongoing, just like all the other stuff we've talked about. It's about checking in on your finances, making adjustments as needed, and making sure you have the resources to handle whatever comes your way.
Well said. And before we wrap up this section, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Okay, what's that?
Emergency preparedness isn't just about checking boxes off a list. It's about building a mindset of resilience. It's about believing that no matter what happens, you have the strength and the resources to overcome it.
It's about embracing the unexpected and being ready to adapt. It's about innovating when faced with adversity.
Exactly. And that's what makes businesses stand out, their ability to not just survive, but to thrive in the face of challenges.
Well said.
Okay, we covered a lot in this segment, from the psychological effects of disasters to the importance of being financially prepared. But there's one more critical piece of the puzzle we need to discuss:
And what's that?
data protection. In this digital age, our businesses rely on data more than ever, and we need to be ready to protect it from disasters too.
Absolutely. We're going to dive into the specifics of data protection and disaster recovery in our next segment, so stay tuned.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot already. We've covered being prepared for physical damage, having good vendors, making sure your employees are taken care of, and being financially prepared.
And as we keep moving into this digital age, there's another layer of preparedness that's becoming more and more important: data protection.
Absolutely. These days, businesses rely so much on data.
Oh, yeah,
Customer info, financial records, operating systems, intellectual property, it's all data.
it is.
And losing that data in a disaster, it could be devastating.
Absolutely devastating. Be like losing the brain of your business.
Exactly. So having a solid data protection and disaster recovery plan is essential.
Non-negotiable.
So where do we even begin with something like that?
Well, you got to start by figuring out what data is most critical to your operations. What can you absolutely not afford to lose?
Makes sense. It's about prioritizing what needs the most protection.
That's it. Once you've identified your critical data, you got to figure out how to protect it.
I'm guessing that means regular backups, right?
Absolutely. Regular backups are the foundation of any data protection strategy. But it's not just about backing up the data, it's about making sure you can actually recover it quickly and efficiently if something happens.
So how do you do that? What does that look like?
Well, one of the most reliable methods is using a combo of on-site and off-site backups.
Okay, so not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. On-site backups are great for quick recovery from smaller issues like a hardware failure.
But what about something bigger, like a fire or a flood that takes out your whole building?
That's where off-site backups are crucial. They ensure that even if your main location is inaccessible, you still have copies of that important data stored somewhere else.
So what are some good ways to handle off-site backups?
There are a few different options, and the best one depends on your needs and budget. Cloud-based backup services have become really popular because they're scalable, flexible, and you can access them from anywhere with an internet connection.
So it's like a virtual vault for your data, up there in the cloud.
Exactly. Another option is to physically take copies of your backups to a secure location, like a safe deposit box or a data storage facility.
Gotcha. So you've got the backup sorted. What else is important for data protection?
Cybersecurity,
Oh, right.
especially with all the cyber threats out there, which are getting more and more sophisticated all the time.
Definitely. We've seen a huge increase in cyber attacks, things like ransomware that lock down your data and phishing scams trying to steal information.
Yep. And a cyber attack can be just as bad as a natural disaster when it comes to data loss.
So how can businesses protect themselves from these cyber threats?
It starts with having strong cybersecurity measures in place, things like firewalls, antivirus software, intrusion detection systems.
Okay.
But it's also about educating your employees. Teach them about good cybersecurity practices, like creating strong passwords, recognizing phishing attempts, and being careful about what they click on.
Makes sense.
All those things are crucial. And you also need to keep your software and security protocols up to date, always staying one step ahead of those emerging threats.
It's like a constant arms race, isn't it? Businesses versus cyber criminals?
It is, but being proactive and staying alert can really reduce your chances of becoming a victim.
So we've talked about backups and cybersecurity. What else is essential for a good data protection plan?
Having a clear disaster recovery plan.
Okay.
This plan outlines exactly what steps you'll take to restore your data and get your business operational again after a disaster.
Like a roadmap for getting back on your feet.
Exactly. Your disaster recovery plan should include things like figuring out alternative workspaces, establishing communication protocols, and prioritizing the recovery of those critical systems and data.
It should also lay out who's responsible for what so that everyone knows what they need to do when you're in that recovery mode.
Yep. And just like your emergency response plan, your disaster recovery plan should be tested and updated regularly.
So data protection is a multi-layered process that needs a lot of planning and attention to detail.
It is. But the good news is there are resources out there to help businesses navigate all of this.
Speaking of resources, I know Good Rates Insurance has services related to data protection, right?
They do. Good Rates offers risk management consulting services. They can help businesses develop those comprehensive data protection and disaster recovery plans.
So they can handle all your business protection needs.
Exactly. They've got a team of experts who can assess your risks, recommend solutions, and provide ongoing support.
Sounds like having a trusted partner like Good Rates Insurance can really make a difference when it comes to all this data protection and disaster recovery stuff.
Oh, absolutely. They can give you the expertise and guidance you need to feel confident that your data is secure and you're ready for anything.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from practical prevention tips to the impact of these events on people's mental well-being to how important data protection is.
And I hope everyone listening feels more prepared and informed about how to protect their businesses from the unexpected.
I think the biggest takeaway here is that emergency preparedness isn't just a nice to have, it's something every business needs if they want to thrive in today's world.
Couldn't agree more. And it's not about being scared, it's about taking action. Mitigate those risks, build that resilience.
It's about having a plan, knowing what resources you have, and building those strong support networks.
If you're feeling overwhelmed or unsure where to begin, reach out to the experts at Good Rates Insurance. They can help you assess your risks, create a plan, and give you the guidance you need to feel confident and prepared.
Great advice. And for those who are ready to take that first step, remember Good Rates Insurance offers a free business insurance coverage review. You can call them at 647-889-4663 to set that up.
It's a great opportunity to get a personalized assessment of your current coverage and see if there are any gaps in your protection.
All right, everyone, that's a wrap for this deep dive into emergency preparedness for businesses.
Hope you found it useful and empowering.
And remember, the best time to prepare for an emergency is before it happens.
Stay safe, stay informed, and stay ahead of the game.
We'll see you on our next deep dive.